zusammen and welcome to lesson number 2 in a 30-part series on how to learn German in 30 days. In today's lesson, I'm going to walk you through some fundamental grammatical categories. Ta-da! First of all, we've got the noun gender on the agenda, followed by the articles, both definite and indefinite. Then, as you can see, I've combined declension and cases because the declension of the nouns is dependent on the cases they are used in, so to speak. You'll see in a moment. Followed by the first two cases, the nominative case and the accusative case. Then I'll show you what happens to the both definite and indefinite articles in the nominative or the accusative case. So bear with me, it's a lot to cover, but don't forget it's an intensive German course designed for the proactive people, the dialogue time. Because as you know guys, the text is our basis to do the exercises. Ankunft bei Frau Gluck, arriving at Mrs. Gluck's. Guten Tag, Frau Gluck. Ich bin Yuki. Guten Tag. Willkommen in Deutschland. Bitte kommen Sie herein. Danke. Hier ist das Wohnzimmer. Bitte, nehmen Sie Platz. Sie sind sicher durstig. Möchten Sie ein Wasser, einen Kaffee oder eine Cola? Eine Cola bitte. Hier ist die Küche. Hier essen wir. Das ist das Schlafzimmer. Das ist das Bad. Da können Sie duschen. Und das Zimmer ist für Sie. Oh, das Zimmer ist groß und hell. Da habe ich viel Platz. Es gibt auch einen Fernseher. Ja, Sie können hier fernsehen oder im Wohnzimmer. Und wer ist das? Das ist Mainzel, die Katze. Sie dürfen Mainzel ruhig streicheln. Ich liebe Tiere. Ich habe zu Hause einen Hund. Er heißt Männchen. First up, the noun gender. Each noun in German has its own gender. How can I identify what gender a certain noun has? With the help of the article. So we've got 3 articles. Der for the masculine nouns, die for the feminine nouns, and das for the neuter nouns. I like to color code the articles and everything that happens to the articles, because declension and the cases, you know, otherwise it can get too confusing in your minds. And so I like this system. As you can see, blue for masculine nouns, red for feminine nouns, and green for neuter nouns. I've taken it out of this wonderful course book, Netzwerk A1.1, that I use with my students. How can we learn the noun gender efficiently? Is it a random thing? Do we have to learn every noun and the attached article to it by heart? Some resources say yes, it's advisable. However, we've got so many nouns that we have to learn. I think it's more advisable to recognize some patterns behind this structure, right? For example, why is it der Opa, die Oma, but das Enkelkind? There are some rules that might help you recognize and remember the noun gender. For example, female persons tend to be feminine, die Oma, the grandmother. Male persons tend to be masculine, der Opa, the grandfather. But das Enkelkind, right? So Kind happens to be neuter. Also das Mädchen is an exception to this rule because it's something to do with the morphology here. Mädchen happens to end in the suffix hen. And nouns that end in this suffix tend to be neuter. So we've got das Mädchen, das Brötchen, it's like a bon, das Kätzchen, right? The kitten. Let's break it down a bit. Masculine nouns. So, the male persons, professions and animals. So we've got der Vater, the father, der Opa, the grandfather, der Kater, the tomcat, der Lehrer, the teacher. All days of the week are masculine nouns. We've got 7. Der Montag, Monday, der Dienstag, Tuesday, der Mittwoch, Wednesday, der Donnerstag, Thursday, der Freitag, Friday, der Samstag, Saturday, and der Sonntag, Sunday. All the months also happen to be masculine. Brilliant news! So, we've got der Januar, der Februar, der März, der April, der Mai, der Juni, der Juli, der August, der September, der Oktober, der November, der Dezember. The seasons of the year happen to be masculine. Der Winter, der Frühling, der Sommer, der Herbst. Also nouns that end in suffixes ling. So, for example, der Frühling, the spring. Also nouns that end in the suffixes ich und ik, like der Teppich or der Essig. Right? So der Essig is the vinegar and der Teppich is the rug. So let's do the D article that stands for the feminine nouns. Here we've got female persons, professions and animals. Die Mutter, the mother, die Oma, the grandmother, die Katze, the cat, die Lehrerin, the teacher, who is female, right? Also we've got a couple of suffixes that are, without exception, feminine. Brilliant news. So the suffix ung, Wohnung, right? Die Wohnung, the flat. The suffix schaft, die Wissenschaft, the science. The suffix tät, die Universität, which is obvious. The suffix keit, Fröhlichkeit. And the last grammatical gender, which is identifiable with the help of the article das, right? The neuter nouns. Nouns that end in suffixes such as hin, Brötchen, Kätzchen, Mädchen, the suffix lein, Büchlein, like a little book. Suffix like das Museum. The suffix ment, like das Experiment. Practice time. 5 sentences. Der, die, o, das. 1. Der Hund heißt Männchen. 2. Das Baby schreit. 3. Das Zimmer ist für sie. 4. Das Bad ist groß. 5. Der Fernseher ist im Wohnzimmer. Next up are the articles. And the good news is if you have a good command of English, then you know when to use indefinite articles, when to use the definite articles. So if something is new and unknown, then we use the indefinite articles. And once it's been introduced and is known to us, then we use the definite articles. By the way, in brackets, der, die, das are the definite articles in German. And their indefinite equivalents are ein, eine und ein. Let's look at some examples. Eine Oma is the indefinite article, die Oma is the definite variant. Ein Opa is the indefinite article, der Opa is its definite counterpart. Ein Enkelkind is the indefinite article and das Enkelkind is the definite version, right? So, practice time. Complete the sentences with the correct article. Number 1, eins. Das ist eine Frau. We don't know which woman. And now, all of a sudden, we can recognize her. Die Frau heißt Yuki. 2. Das ist ein Hund. We don't know. And then, der Hund heißt Männchen. And then we've got, das ist eine Katze. And die Katze heißt Mainzel. Next up, we've got declension and cases, and nouns can be in 4 different cases: the nominative case, the accusative case, the dative case, and the genitive case. By the way, I've got a video on the case system in German. If you're interested, check it out. When we're making a sentence in German, it is very useful to know what case a certain verb takes, because verbs determine what case the noun and the article take. Does it make sense? For example, the verb to be, sein, always demands the nominative case. So, das ist die Küche. Okay, die Küche ist in the nominative case because it's the subject of the sentence. Depending on the role the noun plays in a sentence, we can identify the case. Okay? Das ist die Küche. Die Küche is the subject, and so it's in the nominative case. So, some very useful verbs that always demand the accusative case. Haben, to have, right? Kaufen, to buy. Brauchen, to need. Trinken, to drink. Nehmen, to take. Mögen, to like. So, haben always goes with the accusative case. What does it mean? Well, it takes a direct object. Okay? For example, ich habe eine Katze. I have a cat. I, subject, have, verb, a cat, direct object. And so, the direct object is the accusative case. Kaufen. Ich kaufe eine Blume. I buy what? A flower. Direct object. Brauchen. Ich brauche eine Tomate. I need what? A tomato. Direct object. Based on the dialogue, you've probably been scratching your heads, right? Ein Wasser, eine Cola or einen Kaffee. Ich trinke einen Kaffee. Well, the thing is, the verb trinken, to drink, always demands the accusative case, right? And so, ich trinke einen Kaffee. Einen Kaffee is the direct object, right? Ich nehme ein Taxi. Okay, so I take a taxi. Ich nehme was, so I take what? A taxi is the accusative case. I take what? A taxi is the direct object, and so we need the accusative case here. Ich mag eine Pizza. I'd like a pizza, right? I'd like what? A pizza, the direct object, and so we need the accusative case here. So, I've just introduced you to the nominative and to the accusative cases, super briefly obviously, because it's an intensive course, and I am now going to show you the declensions, some of them, because the declensions are the tiny little endings, right? The tiny little changes that happen to the articles most of the time, because the nouns, they stay the same most of the time, right? So let's take a look what happens to the definite and to the indefinite articles in the nominative and in the accusative cases. Let's stick with Kaffee, Wasser und Cola for a minute to see what happens to the articles in the nominative and in the accusative case. Das ist ein Kaffee. It is a coffee. Der Kaffee ist heiß. The coffee is hot. Das ist ein Wasser. This is a water. Das Wasser ist kalt. The water is cold. Das ist eine Cola. This is a Coke. Die Cola ist warm. The Coke is warm. Alright, so I've used the verb to be, sein, and that's why it's in the nominative case. Nothing happens, right? Ich möchte einen Kaffee bitte. Can you see what's happened to ein? It's become einen, right? So all masculine nouns in the accusative case have this n ending. Einen Kaffee. Ich möchte ein Wasser bitte. I'd like a water, please. Can you see? Nothing has happened. It stays the same. Brilliant. Ich möchte eine Cola bitte. I'd like to have a Coke, please. Nothing happens to the feminine nouns in the accusative case. So, the only thing you need to remember is that the masculine nouns, they get the en ending in the accusative case, not they, but the article that precedes the noun, right? So, ein Kaffee becomes einen Kaffee. Ein Tee becomes einen Tee. Ein Wein becomes einen Wein. Practice time. So you've got 6 sentences to fill in the gaps using ein, eine oder einen. Ich möchte einen Tee und ein Wasser. Brilliant! And why? Well, because möchte demands the accusative case. It takes a direct object. 2. Ich nehme einen Kaffee mit Milch. Nehme also demands the accusative case. And it takes a direct object, right? Einen Kaffee. Yuki trinkt eine Cola. Trinkt also takes a direct object. Yuki hat einen Hund. We know haben takes a direct object. Frau Glück hat eine Katze. Same applies here, but eine because Katze happens to be feminine, right? The feminine gender. Kauft ein Auto. That's correct. Kaufen takes a direct object, right? To buy. And Auto happens to be neuter. Next up are some question words for both persons and things in the nominative and in the accusative case. So, if I'd like to know who somebody is, I ask, wer ist das? Das ist Yuki. Wer sind die Frauen? Das sind Yuki und Frau Glück. Right? Wer always goes with persons. Now, if I have the verb to see, sehen, that demands a direct object, I use wen. Wen sehen Sie? Ich sehe Yuki. Wen sehen Sie? Ich sehe Yuki und Frau Glück. When we've got inanimate things, I go, was ist das? Das ist ein Fernseher. Was sind das? Das sind 2 Fernseher. And in the accusative case, brilliant news, was stays the same. Was sehen Sie? Ich sehe einen Fernseher. Because der Fernseher, masculine, we need the en ending, don't we? Was sehen Sie? Ich sehe 2 Fernseher. right? So I see one television or I see two televisions. Practice time. Please complete the sentences using wer, wen or was. Nummer 1. So based on the answer, das ist Frau Glück. It's a person. Without thinking, we know wer ist das. Das ist Frau Glück. Nummer 2. The answer is ein Fernseher. It's an inanimate thing, a TV, right? So without thinking, was ist das? Ein Fernseher. Now we have the verb sehen, which is to see. That demands a direct object, right? Ich sehe die Lehrerin. Nummer 3. Wen sehen Sie? Right? Nummer 4. Ich nehme einen Kaffee. Was nehmen Sie? Ich nehme einen Tee und ein Wasser. Nummer 5. Wir sehen Yuki. Wen sehen Sie? Right? Yuki is a person, a woman, right? And I need the question word wen. Last point for today's lesson are the 3 useful modal verbs. Können, kann, dürfen, may, and möchten, would like. In the first lesson we did a couple of verbs, right, depending on the person pronouns. Now it's similar with the modal verbs, but it's also a bit different. Ich kann Deutsch. I can German, meaning I can speak German. Du kannst Deutsch. Er kann Deutsch. Sie kann Deutsch. Es kann Deutsch. Now you know, as for das Mädchen, for example, right? So the girl can speak German. Wir können Deutsch. Ihr könnt Deutsch. Sie können Deutsch. So what happens? The first person singular and the third person singular are identical. Ich kann, er kann, sie kann, es kann. Also the first person plural, wir, and the third person plural, they, sie, are identical as well. But this we do know based on the first lesson, don't we? Ich darf gehen. I may go. Du darfst gehen. Er darf gehen. Sie darf gehen. Es darf gehen. Wir dürfen gehen. Ihr dürft gehen. Sie dürfen gehen. Again, first person and third person singular are identical. Ich darf, er, sie, es darf. First person plural and third person plural are identical as well. Wir dürfen, sie dürfen. A very versatile, practical and useful modal verb to learn. Also to sound polite. Ich möchte einen Tee bitte. I would like a tea, please. Du möchtest einen Tee. Er möchte einen Tee. Sie möchte einen Tee. Es möchte einen Tee. Wir möchten einen Tee. Ihr möchtet einen Tee. Sie möchten einen Tee. Works along the same lines. First and third person singular are the same. Ich möchte, er, sie, es möchte. Und first person and third person plural are the same as well. Wir möchten und sie möchten. Good job! Now you put 5 sentences to complete using können, dürfen or möchten. Nummer 1. Was möchtest du trinken? That's correct, right? Was möchtest du trinken? Wir dürfen hier nicht parken. Right? It's not allowed to park here. Yuki kann im Wohnzimmer Fernsehen. Right. 4. Ihr könnt im Bad duschen. Right. 5. Du darfst hier rauchen. Because it's a smoker, for example, right, on a train. This concludes this second lesson. I know it's been a lot to take in. Take your time at your own pace. Try to digest this information. Pause the video if you need to. Go back to the beginning. Try to understand the patterns and principles behind those categories. If you have any questions, as usual, drop me a comment in the comments section down below. And I'll see you in lesson number 3 next week. I wish you success. I wish you joy. Tschüss zusammen. Bye.